all these possibilities open up. And, I can say from a young age, I knew, I came from a very spiritual family. My mom's a spiritual healer. So I saw spirit even when I was young. I can see energy around people. And so I have that ability. I just thought everyone had that. And when I started going to school, I'm first generation Canadian. So for those of you who are listening to the podcast, I'm East Indian, and my parents are immigrants here from India and Malaysia. And so I just wanted to fit in, right? And being an East Indian kid in West Edmonton, psychic medium, sees, spirit, that's the opposite of fitting in. So at the age of 9, I just shut all of that off, and I just went to school and had friends and had amazing relationships, and went to university, got my business degree, went into supply chain management, met my amazing husband of 21 years now, and we moved to Vancouver, had a great time with our careers, traveling the world, and then moved back to Edmonton after we had our first child. And then it was after I had my second child, which is 14 years ago, all of my abilities started to come back. And I was so confused because all I wanted to do was get back into, I had actually gone into sales and marketing. I was a sales rep in the food industry. And my goal was, after my kids had started to go back to school, to get back into purchasing and retire a VP of purchasing in some big company and, live the life. And that was not to be, because every time I tried to go back in, I was shut down. They lost my transcript. I went for my PMAC designation, which is a purchasing supply chain designation that's required now. And I went back for that. They lost my transcripts. The office closed down. They went on strike. And I was like, what is happening? Right? Every turn I was getting blocked. Yet when I started to develop my gifts, the right teachers just started to show up. And people were like, I need you to help me. And can I pay you? And I was like, what is happening? Like, it was so wild how the most amazing people just started to show up. And it was almost like the door closed on one side of my path, but it was redirecting me to this whole other world. And so as I started to develop my mediumship abilities and my psychic abilities, I realized there was such a need for people to be held in that space of grief and mourning, because people don't come and see a medium unless someone's in spirit or you're going through a tough time.
Yeah.
And so I just realized there was such a need. And I've always had this want to help people. Even in all of my corporate jobs, I've always been the person that people would come to and sit down and tell their story to, and how could I help them? And I knew everything about my suppliers, to a way of like, I even knew when their children's birthdays were, and like I would send them gifts. Like, you just get to know people, because I am so heart-centered and so heart-led. And so with then the grief counseling certification, that happened March 2020. And that was actually when I was let go from my corporate job, because I was doing the grief and the mediumship on the side. And by then I had already certified as an astrologer, which took 6 intense years of certification. And I just went full time into my business at that point, and incorporated in 2021, and haven't looked back. So I help people now for a living to really incorporate and integrate their grief and live their intuition and their cosmic design, meaning their human design or their astrology combined together. So you can sort of see the map and start to live your authentic true life versus what you were kind of conditioned to in your life. So very interesting, set of skills that I have, and it's never a dull moment. I have so much fun in what I do.
Wow, what a journey. And I had to just chuckle to myself when you said about the transcripts getting lost and that there's blocks along the way. Years ago, I wanted to be a physician. And I thought, man, I'm going to be a pretty damn good physician. And I wrote the MCAT. And as I was writing the MCAT, medical admission test, we were in this room. And when you get in the zone of writing an exam, you are just like focused. And then someone interrupted, not even 15 minutes in, and said that there is an exam error in your exam if you have the letters BS on the cover. And I turned my cover over, and sure enough, it said BS. We had an option of rewriting the exam. We had the option of taking a, adjusted score, or, all these other options. And I just sat there. It took me a few moments to get back into it. I finished the exam.
Oh,
But at the end of it, I realized that was a sign. It was a sign for me that I wasn't going the right direction.
I love that. And I love that you recognize that versus pushing through. That's what
Mhm.
I think we're so conditioned to. If you have a block, push through, go to the next exam. Actually, I did that. I thought I was going to be a lawyer out of university. And I went and wrote the LSAT twice and I got the 50th percentile twice. And I'm like, okay, this isn't meant for me. What now? Right. And it's that pushing through. But you know what? Like, and I love that you shared that story. Thank you. Is that you can't get it wrong, because even if you
Yeah.
had written the exam and tried to go forward, there would have been another block again, because that's not where your life was trying to
Yeah.
lead you to. So yes, we have free will, but at the same time, our soul chose these markers along the path that we wanted to experience. So you were not meant for med school, as I was not meant for law school, but what was
Yeah.
meant for us instead was so much better, right?
Yeah. And how, like, along the way, like, we do have devastation, because that's what I thought my path was meant to be.
Yes,
Right.
grief.
And I want people listening to know that it is real to still, be upset that you didn't get in, or you didn't go the path that you wanted. And then, but in hindsight, you can see where the pieces are and who led you and the people that you meet. I think it's just fascinating. Or even the books that have been drawn to my attention to read, that insight I needed. It was one line in the book. So I find it so profound when you actually are present and paying attention for these signs that show up in your life, that you can really be guided.
I love that. And I think you're right. That's at your intuition. Your soul always knows the path, but our ego, our mind is so powerful, right? You're going to be this, you're going to like, it really hones in and locks in on this goal that you want until you achieve it. And when it doesn't, and maybe that's a big, awesome reframe for everyone here, is that the things that didn't come for you to you easily or weren't meant for you, it was actually something much better was coming in. And you're right. It's so good that you said, like, you can honor the sadness that came with that. Like, I really had to honor the sadness as well of like, maybe I'm not meant to be a lawyer. I'll just have to go into the workforce. And the more things started to happen on that other path, it was like, wow, I actually am meant to be this over here. And so I would never have been able to enjoy the life I had I gone into law school, because I had children, I got married, and all of that couldn't have been possible if I was slogging it out with a law
Yeah,
degree. So very interesting.
it is. And I would love, you touched on intuition. So how do you define intuition, and how can individuals tap into cultivating those intuitive abilities?
Intuition is that thing that you know, but you don't know how you know, but you just know that you know. you know, it's that nudge from inside that doesn't make sense to anyone else. But you have to like go right here instead of left. And you're like, what? I don't go that way. But you just decide you're going to take it and you realize there's an accident. Or you don't go on that plane trip because you're like, something just nudging me not to go. I know it sounds weird. I'm going to lose money. I just can't go. And the plane crashes. It's just those inner nudges that you don't know why you know what you know. And because of my like psychology and grief counseling and all the courses I've taken, there's in psychology, they call it sort of your subconscious knowing. So your subconscious brain takes in so much information, but you're only really aware of about 5% of it. Otherwise, you just couldn't function, right? So you've automated so much going into your subconscious, and it just kind of holds on to that. And so people, especially with like neurodivergent ADHD,
Mm.
have the ability to siphon through so much information quickly. And so they just have this killer intuition. It's actually a thing. ADHD people and ADD people have higher intuitive, I think, nudges and follow it without kind of questioning it, because they're just so used to sifting through so much information. But when we have such a powerful mind, we can often talk ourselves out of, oh no, this is not, no, we'll just try it again, we'll just try it again, or no, this is ridiculous, we always take this road, we're just going to take this road, and then there's an accident, right? So there's these nudges that come up. From a spiritual perspective, we are energetic beings having this human experience, and we are putting out this energy. There is an energetic field around us. Science has proven that to be true. Our electromagnetic spectrum, or bioplasma field, as they call it. And that field is, you're like a little antenna, and you're taking in the energy of everything that's coming in your space. And so you then can pick up on subtle things that maybe others can't, especially if you're come from a very volatile home, or you're a very like emotionally sensitive person, you pick up on energy so easily. So
Mm.
when you start to understand what that feels like, you start to, if you're highly anxious, what we often sort of say, I mean, there's three reasons for anxiety. One is you can have neurochemical, issues there in terms of not enough receptors or neurochemicals in your brain. So that's a thing that needs medical intervention.
Yeah.
Or you can also be picking up of energy around you
Mm.
and not understanding it. So when I realized my mediumship was coming back, I was getting so anxious and I was like, I can feel something, but I can't put my finger on it. Right. And that anxiety, I knew it wasn't real. Like I knew it wasn't, I've never had anxiety in my life. My best friend has anxiety her whole life. So I knew what that looked like. And that didn't feel like what I could feel like I was having panic attacks. And I was realizing as I started to get help is that I was feeling the energy of people who have crossed over, spirit that was trying to communicate with me, but I didn't know what it was. I could feel
Wow.
somebody else's energy, and that was setting me off. And then the third reason for anxiety is a fearful anticipation of the future, right? Where we're anticipating a fearful future that hasn't happened yet or will never happen. And that can cause us to be anxious as well. So that anxiety is a kind of why I bring it up, can be a little flag. Again, there's a neurochemical reason for it too. So if you're experiencing that, please do see your doctor to make sure it's not medical. But there can be you are just so sensitive, you're picking up energy in your field.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, that's a really good sign for you to develop your intuition. So many of my clients who have come into my intuition classes, I teach intuition 101, 201, 301, and then some of them go on to do my mediumship classes, and they realized that they were actually mediums and they were picking up on energy, but they didn't realize it. Right. So being like in a care profession such as yourself, Deborah,
Mhm.
you would be around people who are crossing over, who are going through tough times, and you're very empathic. You'd always have to also have boundaries with that, being a nurse, right? You can't just take everybody's energy home with you. And
Correct.
so having that intuition is not just in knowing that something is about to happen or feeling a nudge. It's
Mhm.
also being able to help people and hold emotions and understanding that they're not yours and releasing that and having boundaries with your energy. So it's really about energy management. If you kind of sum it all up, that's what intuition is.